What if the real shock was never the court defeat itself? What if the real story was the moment Prince Harry finally discovered that the institution he spent years fighting no longer sees him as part of its future? Because behind the headlines, behind the legal arguments, and behind the carefully crafted public statements, a devastating reality appears to have unfolded in plain sight. And for Harry and Meghan, this may be the moment everything changed. Inside a quiet London courtroom, a decision landed with the force of an earthquake. No dramatic speeches, no emotional appeals, no royal exceptions, just a cold legal ruling that slammed shut the final door Harry had been pushing against for years. The outcome wasn't merely about security. That is where many people stop looking. But when you follow the pattern, another possibility emerges. This battle appeared to be about status, relevance, and the desperate effort to preserve a connection to a royal identity that has been slipping further away with every passing year. For years, Harry argued that he required the highest level of protection whenever he returned to Britain. But critics have repeatedly suggested there was something much larger at stake. If he could maintain automatic state-backed security, then he could continue presenting himself as someone who remained deeply connected to the machinery of the British establishment. Not just a prince by birth, but a figure still operating within the royal system itself. Then came the ruling. The court's message was brutally simple. Personal disappointment is not a legal argument. Frustration is not evidence. Feeling wrong does not automatically mean a decision was unlawful. Think about how devastating that sounds from Harry's perspective. For years, his public narrative has revolved around grievances, perceived injustices, and battles against institutions. Yet here was a judge effectively saying that emotions alone cannot overturn policy. Suddenly, one of the most powerful narratives in the Sussex story collided with the hard wall of legal reality. And while legal documents were being dissected in London, another image was creating its own controversy thousands of miles away. Meghan Markle appeared in Geneva, participating in a high-profile event while discussion of Harry's legal defeat exploded across international media. The timing immediately raised eyebrows. Was it coincidence? Was it strategy? Was it an attempt to redirect attention? Nobody knows for certain. But in the world of royal gossip, timing is never viewed as accidental. The contrast was impossible to ignore. On one side, Harry was dealing with the collapse of a years-long legal battle. On the other, Meghan was attempting to project confidence, purpose, and international influence. Yet critics quickly began asking uncomfortable questions about public image, branding, and whether the couple's carefully curated global identity was beginning to show signs of strain. Then came the detail that really caught attention. The new reality means Harry must now provide advance notice before visits to Britain, allowing authorities to evaluate security arrangements case by case. No automatic privileges, no guaranteed treatment, no assumption of special status. To many observers, this looked less like a security issue and more like symbolic demotion. A prince who once moved through royal life without question now faces procedures similar to those faced by private citizens. That shift carries enormous implications. Because if Britain is no longer operating as Harry's unquestioned royal base, what does that mean for his future? What does it mean for Meghan? What does it mean for Archie and Lilibet? And perhaps most importantly, what does it mean for the brand that has been built around the idea that the Sussexes remain central figures in the royal story? Those questions became even more explosive when attention started moving away from courtrooms and toward finances. Because while one battle appeared to be ending in London, another controversy was quietly gaining momentum elsewhere. Documents, filings, declining numbers, and growing scrutiny were beginning to paint a picture that critics described as far more troubling than a lost court appeal. And when investigators started following the money, they found themselves staring directly at organizations connected to Harry and Meghan organizations that were suddenly attracting questions nobody could easily answer. The moment the money trail entered the conversation, the entire story took on a completely different shape. Because court defeats can be explained away, public relations disasters can be managed, headlines can eventually fade, but financial questions have a habit of lingering, growing, and multiplying. And suddenly, people who had spent years defending Harry and Meghan found themselves asking questions they never imagined they would ask. Why were charitable organizations attracting so much scrutiny? Why were watchdogs demanding answers? And why did every new document seem to generate even more controversy than the one before it? As attention shifted toward the foundation connected to the Sussex brand, a troubling pattern began emerging. The numbers told a story that was impossible to ignore. Donations that once appeared strong had reportedly fallen dramatically. Critics pointed to deficits, regulatory notices, and governance concerns. Each issue on its own might have been survivable. Together, they created a picture that looked increasingly difficult to explain. And then came the issue that made observers lean forward. Transparency. Because in the charitable world, transparency is everything. It is the currency that creates trust. Without it, even the most inspiring mission can begin to crumble. Questions about audits, filings, and financial oversight started circulating through media circles and watchdog organizations. Every unanswered question seemed to generate 3 more. Every delay appeared to create additional suspicion. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about intentions. It was about documentation. But if that wasn't enough, another storm was already forming thousands of miles away. The Invictus Games. For years, Invictus represented something powerful. It was often viewed as Prince Harry's most respected achievement, a project that transcended royal drama and focused on wounded veterans rebuilding their lives. It was the one area where critics and supporters could often find common ground. That is precisely why the new controversy hit so hard. Questions surrounding costs, budgets, oversight, and financial transparency began surfacing with increasing intensity. Critics demanded explanations. Supporters demanded clarification. Veterans themselves reportedly started asking where enormous amounts of money had gone. And when questions meet silence, suspicion grows fast, very fast. The most dangerous problem for any public figure isn't necessarily an accusation. It's a vacuum. Because when answers don't arrive, people create their own. Suddenly, conversations that once centered on courage, resilience, and recovery became overshadowed by discussions about spending, administration, and accountability. Every new figure generated fresh outrage. Every missing explanation became another headline. The narrative was shifting, and it was shifting in a direction Harry could hardly afford. Then another warning sign appeared. People started leaving. Not random employees, not temporary consultants, senior figures, longtime associates, individuals who had witnessed the Sussex journey from the beginning. One departure can be dismissed. 2 departures can be explained. But when exits begin forming a pattern, observers inevitably start wondering what those people saw before they walked away. That question now hangs over the entire Sussex operation like a dark cloud. What did they witness behind closed doors? Why did experienced professionals choose to leave? And why does every departure seem to arrive just as scrutiny reaches another level? Meanwhile, the pressure keeps building from every direction. Legal defeats, financial questions, organizational controversies, staffing changes, reputation concerns. Separately, they are manageable. Together, they create something far more dangerous, a perception of instability. And perception can be devastating because brands are built on confidence. Confidence from donors, confidence from sponsors, confidence from partners, confidence from audiences. Once that confidence starts cracking, rebuilding it becomes infinitely harder than protecting it in the first place. Now the Sussex story appears to be approaching a crossroads unlike any it has faced before. One road leads toward greater scrutiny, deeper investigations, and even more uncomfortable questions. The other requires transparency, accountability, and answers that satisfy critics who have grown increasingly skeptical. The problem is that time may be running out. Every week brings another headline. Every month introduces another controversy. Every unanswered question creates another opportunity for doubt to spread. And that is what makes this moment feel different. Not because of one court case, not because of one charity, not because of one controversy, but because all of them are converging at exactly the same time. The legal battles, the financial questions, the organizational scrutiny, the departures, the growing skepticism, they are no longer separate stories. They have become one story. And as that story continues unfolding, one question remains hanging over Montecito like a storm cloud that refuses to move. Is this merely another difficult chapter in the Sussex saga, or is this the moment the entire empire finally discovers that the walls have been cracking for much longer than anyone realized? The answer may be closer than anyone thinks.